Do I need to worry then?
Live. Always worry. Here we go.
Well, you always worry if there's something to worry about. That's the thing. Where sometimes Gekshu is when you're worrying and you don't necessarily have to worry, right?
I believe it was the
Needless
Dalai
worry.
Lama that said, worry it takes away today's peace. Doesn't solve anything.
I know Calvin Coolidge said that if you had 10 problems rolling down the road to you, that 9 of them would be in the ditch before they actually arrived.
Okay.
You have to deal with the 10th one, obviously, but sometimes we worry about things that end up not coming to pass. You and I have talked in the past about catastrophe. I can write it better than
catastrophizing.
Catastrophizing.
Right.
Yes, you and I have talked about it. I sometimes have issues with it. I know you've discussed that as well.
Oh, yeah.
So let's not catastrophize Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense today.
Let's talk about what actually happened afterwards. We're going to talk about Randy Gradishar to kick things off. Orange Blue today, we are presented by Champ Honda and Mace. I got chills and I got emotional when Randy Gradishar gets emotional up at the podium because finally, for the first time, it feels like that 1977 Broncos team is getting the recognition it deserves through one Randy Gradishar.
Yeah. If you look back at great defenses of that era, even ones that didn't win Super Bowls, like the Minnesota Vikings never won a Super Bowl during that era. They never won a Super Bowl period, but you look around and you see Carl Eller and,
Alan
Page and Paul Krause. They're all in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So it seemed a bit odd and maybe even a little bit disrespectful that the Broncos of that era and the Orange Crush, it was a truly iconic defense right there with Doomsday in Dallas and the Steel Curtain and the Purple People Eaters and the no-name defense in Miami, which of course has Nick Bonaconte in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was a complete oversight that the Orange Crush was not represented. And now Randy Gradishar is not officially in. He has to pass a vote of the full selection committee, which will be coming up in January. That will actually determine if he's in. If he gets 80% of those votes, he'll be in. That has come to be a rubber stamp on the work of the seniors committee of the Pro Football Hall of Fame at this point. So,
yes. Yeah, and it just feels good for Randy, for that team, and that time. And he mentioned it at his press conference. We've got a Randy Gradishar clip, if you want to call it up. Always cue me with the beautiful bean footage. I was going to tell you that off air.
Do you want?
Yes, because we would. So I'm not caught off guard. If I hear that beautiful bean footage, I know I'm supposed to click something. But either way, I loved when he talked about the road to Super Bowl 12 because it included a game against Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. The 2 years they didn't, one of the reasons why, the Denver Broncos. And I remember a story that Tom Jackson said years ago. Terry Bradshaw came up to him after that game and said, nothing will ever be the same now.
Yeah.
Because now the Denver Broncos going and advancing, winning that first playoff game from their history, which was not good previous to that point. Terry Bradshaw alerted Tom Jackson, my second favorite player of all time behind Walter Payton. He said, things in Denver will never be the same. And Mace, they never were.
Yeah, never went back to where they were. I mean, there have been struggles since then, but the expectations have never declined. And the Broncos, Sean Payton talked about it earlier in training camp. The Broncos became one of those franchises. And when I say those, I mean one of the pillars of the league, a club that's accomplished something. There are some teams, let's face it, they're just another club, right? The Arizona Cardinals are just another team.
Right.
The Jacksonville Jaguars. I work for the Carolina Panthers, but let's face it, they're just another team in this league.
Right.
The Denver Broncos, maybe they're not on the level of iconic like the Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers, but they're in the conversation. They matter to a great many people, and so this is the recognition that era of the Broncos deserves, and it's recognition that for a long time did not appear to be coming. Randy Gradishar, today he alluded to his faith a great deal of the time, and keeping that faith in terms of waiting for the Hall call, but sometimes it was difficult as we roll that beautiful bean footage.
Yeah, I mean, as it has gone on for 30-some years, you sometimes you get used to that, and then sometimes eventually you say, what the heck's going on? What's it taking them so long to do this? And because, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but our Orange Crush defense and playing with the Orange Crush certainly was nationally, and everybody was, up on the Orange Crush defense, Denver Broncos, and we did that for many, many years. And so it's just a great honor. Again, God's timing of why to wait 35 years, I don't know, but that's how long it took me to get in, and it really makes today a very, very special day for sure.
A special day indeed for Randy Gradishar. And your question, and we just played Randy's answer, I thought was the best of his press conference, because we get philosophical on the show. Hell, we started today's show that way. But when you think about the patience required, knowing full well since your days were done in 1983 that you played at a Hall of Fame level, to finally have that recognition, Mace, it's the patience of a saint.
Yeah. And, he talked about that. He mentioned in that response, he mentioned a couple of times earlier about, God's timing. But you know what? For those, and I respect, the beliefs involved with that, but you're only human, right? At some point.
Yeah. Human timing is different.
Yeah. At some point you might say, all right, okay, whenever it happens, it happens.
You have to get to that point, though.
But of course you're going to have doubts. Of
frustration.
Course that you're going to be frustrated, thinking, why didn't this happen before? He was a finalist from the primary pool back in 2008.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was 2000 late in terms of finally becoming a finalist. He should have been a finalist long ago. It was almost like they did it just to say, oh, hey, you were a finalist once and we'll get back to you in the seniors pool. If he goes in next year, assuming that he does, it will have been 16 years after he was a finalist for the first time. And becoming a finalist for the first time, he had to wait 19 years from initial eligibility because of that.
And it's finally going to happen. And I feel great for him. He shouted out Jeff Legwald with the selection committee.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a special Orange and Blue Today shout out to Ron and Cap Hill. He was the Broncos fan of the year. I believe it was 2021. What year Ron was. Yeah. You'll see Ron out at events. You'll see Ron on the Rich Eisen podcast. You'll see Ron everywhere, usually in a Dr. Seuss like Broncos hat.
Orange
devoted,
yeah.
Devoted fan, friend of both of ours. Ron and Cap Hill, buddy, you did it, man. You helped it. You helped get Randy here. So lots of good feelings today at Dove Valley.
Yeah. And you think back on how it was about this time. It was this time, about 13 years ago, we were learning about Floyd Little going in the Hall of Fame, right? And the work that it took to get Floyd through the seniors committee and into the Hall of Fame. That to know that, hey, these guys, they weren't forgotten, even though their accomplishments were generations ago and their retirement was generations ago. Now, Floyd, he goes in the Hall of Fame 35 years after he retires. For Randy Gradishar, assuming that it happens, it's going to be 41 years. He played his last game on Christmas Eve, 1983, a wild card playoff loss in the Seattle Kingdom.
Wow.
Yeah.
Back when Seattle was in the AFC West.
It was Seattle's first playoff appearance. It was John Elway's first season. That was the thing. John Elway and Randy Gradishar intersected for 1 year.
Right.
Almost like a passing of the torch in terms of the alpha of the Broncos, because when Randy Gradishar was in orange and blue, he was the alpha of that team.
Mm-hmm.
And then he retired, and basically it became John Elway for the 15 years that would follow. So it's sort of cool when you have like a connection between eras like that.
A passing of the torch, passing of the baton. And what else is cool, Mace? And I'm glad that we all did this, because there's members in our media cluster that are super young and won't remember this. You and I have a great appreciation for the history of the game, and we're a bit older, whatever. But when we applauded Randy at the end of his press conference, you're not supposed to do that at press, but I like it, man. And Steve Atwater, shout out Steve, because he's like the best guy ever.
Yeah.
He's the one that started those claps.
Well, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah, he was in the media crowd, but he's not really media,
He's on
different,
his own different level.
Yeah, but Randy's made a great deal of friends around here over the years. Quality human being. It'll be awesome to see next summer when he goes in. And I say when, yeah, I think it's safe to assume that he's going to sail through the actual finalist process. Be in. Can't wait to hear what kind of speech he's going to give there, especially back. Ohio's home for him. He's from Champion, Ohio, went to the Ohio State University. Was telling a story today about Woody Hayes recruiting him and showing up at his dad's grocery store.
And I was watching your reaction to Mace. And again, I won't throw people under the bus, but I know some in the media were like, hurry up or whatever. And I was like, no.
That was a good story.
These were great stories from one of the greats, and he had his moment today, and he's going to have more, and it's going to be great to hear these type of stories.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about all the other cool stuff that'll kind of go on. That next year they'll have a day for him at a Broncos home game. They'll put the little Hall of Fame logo next to his name on the Ring of Fame. They'll add a Hall of Fame logo on his plaque on Ring of Fame Plaza. Even in the field house, they'll do a new banner for him. There's the Ring of Famers are on the sideline, but the Hall of Famers are above the end zone. They've got bigger banners, and they'll take down his Ring of Fame banner on the sideline, and they'll put up a Hall of Fame banner there behind the east end zone there in the field house. All these little things. They'll put up a flag for him over on the plaza above the field for training camp. Like they'll add his flag with his name to those that are there. All these little things that will happen, and then he's going to get his Hall of Fame ring. And I think he's going to be one of those dudes that just savors being a Hall of Famer. There are some that are kind of too cool for school on it, right?
Right.
But then you had Floyd Little, who in the decade before he died, as a Hall of Famer, everything they asked, like, hey, do you want to go on this, visit this overseas, visit USO, visit troops, that sort of thing. He's like, yeah, sign me up. Steve Atwater is becoming one of those guys that whenever they ask, like, hey, I want to be involved, sign me up. And I think Randy's going to be one of those guys too. It's well deserved. He deserves to marinate in this honor. And you mentioned Ron and Cap Hill, you mentioned Jeff Legwold, and there are a lot of other people who put stats out there. Even I threw a few things out there in the public as well that I researched. There's a lot of people who had a hand in this, but ultimately it's the strength of Randy Gradishar's resume and what he accomplished that made this possible. It's a long time coming.
It is. And congratulations to one Randy Gradishar. Orange and Blue today, presented by Champ Honda. We had joint practices with the Rams, and we learned some stuff. And we can actually talk about it.
Yeah, because there were people there. It was a sponsor and marketing day.
Right.
So if you're a big wig sponsor, it was kind of a junket. Yeah, hey, come on out, watch practice. I wish they would don't do that on another day. I wish today had been general fans, 3,000 on the hill, because I'd say they were probably about 1,500, 1,600.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were enough to be noticed, but not like last week. And last year when the Cowboys were in, it was positively electric for that practice. So anyway, first, were there fights? There was one little scuffle that you had Damari Mathis, Van Jefferson, Josie Jewell getting in there as well.
Yeah, Randy Gregory, the peacemaker.
Yeah, Randy Gregory was calming things down.
Which is so funny to see him in that role. It's because he's a badass and nobody wants to mess with him. And honestly, that was on Mathis because he body slammed Van Jefferson after the play. Like, you can't do that, dude. Come on.
I'm only citing a Huey Lewis in the News lyric because it was in American Psycho. From hip to be square, those who were the farthest out have gone the other way. That's Randy Gradishar. Randy Gregory last year instigating everything against the Cowboys, even though he wasn't practicing that day. And today he's playing the peacemaker.
Right.
Yes.
It's funny how things turn around.
There's
funny how things work out.
Another Star Trek reference. There's an ancient Vulcan proverb. Only Nixon could go to China. Nerding out with you. But but you get the point, right? Sometimes it takes the person who was at the center of causing everything to be the one who's stopping it, right? There's a long history in literature and film of things like that.
There's a long history on the show of quoting Wayne's World. So the intensity in 10 cities.
Live at Budokai? Even though they meant Budokan, but he was trying to rhyme
it was
with live, right?
Live at Budokai. if the Cowboys was an 11 Spinal Tap, then today was probably like a.
Are we just gonna work everything in right now? Okay.
I think today's practice was probably like a nice 7.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't as intense as we've seen these joint practices be. That 49ers practice was that 2019 or whatever.
On the 49ers side, it was about 12.
It was 12, yeah.
For most of the Broncos, that first practice.
The Broncos. Today, there wasn't any of that.
The Broncos were about a 6 on that first day, but they came back the next day. Remember, that was when Philip Lindsay
fought everybody.
Out. Yeah,
Tim Patrick fought everybody.
Yeah.
They were the only 2, though. But today, I feel like, yes, technically the Rams won the day, but there's too many stories being told that are inaccurate because I thought we saw some good things out there from the Denver Broncos. The Rams were the better team today, but it's not like they just waxed the Broncos.
They were the better team. They were the better team in 2 minutes.
Yes.
They did. The Rams offense did drive to a touchdown. The Broncos offense did stall on the very outer fringes of field goal range in 2 minutes today. In 7-on-7, the Rams offense was much better than the Broncos offense. There were some timing issues, but the Broncos offense did get its feet under it. I will say this, I'm concerned about some timing issues. You know, we had a false start on the defensive side. Nick Bonito jumped offside on 2 plays in a row.
Right. Concerned about the drops today.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy had a couple of drops. It wasn't really a good day for the Broncos wide receivers by and large. Yeah, it could have been a lot better, but they have 2 days. Sean Payton alluded to it after practice, and we even mentioned in the 2019 practices with San Francisco, day 2 was different than day 1. So let's see what happens on day 2. Let's see if the intensities is matched a little bit.
Yes.
When the Broncos go.
And that's why I want to grade this thing as a whole based on the 2 days, you know, and it's not like the Broncos were awful today. There were some good things from Russ, some other things, you know, some timing a little bit off. I think it was a pass to Burton, but either way.
If it were a game, I'd say it'd be about 27-17 or 27-13.
Distinctive.
A clear winner, but not a blowout.
And that leads us back to the Russell Wilson thing. Like, how do we grade Russ when his passes were on point? He's hitting Jerry Jeudy in the hands and he's dropping passes, multiple, plural.
Yeah.
So how do we grade Russell Wilson overall? I felt his timing was a little bit off today.
Yeah. I mean, there were some that he missed. I remember there was one in the end zone. He shot high. You mentioned the play to Burton that was off.
That Burton caught, by the way.
That Burton caught. There was another one to Marvin Mims, I believe, that.
Yep. Almost the opposite play
Mims
side.
Could have caught it, but it was high, and it was just a little dump off into the flat. That's a pass that you have to hit 99 times out of 100, and Russ didn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's a layup, basically.
Yes.
As far as what a quarterback does.
Right.
So, Russ has done a lot of things well in the last couple of weeks. It wasn't his best day. I mean, the offense as a whole, it wasn't their best day. I think the other thing also, and again, it could change tomorrow, but the offense just did not look terribly explosive today. It looked like it.
Now,
it
was
looked
that
like
by
it
design? Because we know in these joint practices, which I love, and I could easily make the argument that joint practices are more important than preseason games, or you get more from them. But was it by design? Because we know that tempo was used today. Mm-hmm. Pat Surtain even talked about adjusting to the tempo of the Rams. And we saw, I'm not giving away too much, we saw a lot of screen passes. Mm-hmm. So was today a day where Sean Payton goes to Sean McVay and said, hey, I'm going to work on a lot of screens today? And that's kind of the script, not the Arian Foster script, but kind of the script for these joint practices where you can say, hey, my guys need to work on these screen passes. Let's work on that today.
Possibly, but when there were opportunities for explosives, they weren't taken. They weren't fully capitalized.
And he could have, because the offensive line wasn't as bad as some people think today. More on that in a little bit.
Of course, you're not going up against Aaron Donald.
Exactly.
Put it this way, if you recall the Rams from their appearance in the Super Bowl 18 months ago, you looked at the roster today, it's a lot of who's that's. Now, the thing for them, and I mentioned this on social media, today they had Matthew Stafford, today they had Cooper Kupp. And I think that led to some of the defensive struggles as well. They're always going to be able to run the ball reasonably well. That's part and parcel of a Sean McVay offense. But if they keep Stafford and Kupp healthy in a shaky NFC, this is still a 9-10 win team.
Right.
It is.
And that division has plenty of question marks.
That's a huge if. And I have the Rams at 7 wins because I don't believe Matthew Stafford is going to stay healthy.
Right. And this was Cooper Kupp's first practice back. He had missed all of training camp to this point.
He had a drop, but he also
beat Surtain a couple of times.
Like he looked all the way there today.
Yeah. You couldn't have told it was his first day if you didn't know that he'd missed all of training camp. Cooper Kupp came out there and looked like Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was fun to watch.
It was
the
fun
Cam
to watch,
thing too.
But tough for Surtain though.
Here's what we're getting into, dude.
Where's my car?
I don't want to be an alarmist.
But
if you want to beat the Denver Broncos, you want to stay away from that pass rush, more on the problems in the pit, just a second. The answer is running down their throat because Cam Akers was at that second level a lot today. A lot.
This may have exposed the D-line a little bit today.
How do you feel about that?
Well, DJ Jones wasn't out there.
True.
But the D-line depth, and it has shown promise, but you were going up against a first-tier offensive line today, whereas against the 49ers and against the Cardinals, by and large, almost all of the success, even for the Broncos first-teamers, was against backups. Well, today, you're stepping up in class in that regard, and it didn't go particularly well. There were some flashes. I thought Jonathan Cooper had a solid day, but he's an edge. Up front,
Jonathan Harris batted a pass, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay, yeah, so that's a good.
But it wasn't consistent.
But didn't you expect more from the run defense? Because when I'm seeing Akers put a crown of his helmet in Josie Jewell's chest multiple times, I'm like, how in the hell is he even getting to Jewell?
It wasn't a great day for either Jewell or Alex Singleton out there, I thought. But let's see where they're at tomorrow. I mean, maybe today was a bad day. I mean, again, we often see things turn on day 2 of a set of joint practices. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Like we mentioned the 49ers back in 2019. Broncos came out for day 2 like they had firecrackers up their butts. The year before against Chicago for the second joint practice, not so much. It was more the same. Right. The other thing is this. In every set of joint practices that I have been around, there has been something that came out of that was a tell on a major thing that happened in the season. Like, for example, in 2018, the Bears absolutely pulverized the Broncos with passes to the tight ends. And covering tight ends became a huge problem for that team, most prominently when George Kittle went off with the greatest first half any tight end has ever had in a regular season game against the Broncos in December of that year. In 2019, it was the lack of intensity that we saw that first day.
Right.
The 49ers,
almost alarmingly so, where the 49ers stake claim to Dove Valley.
The 49ers punched them in the mouth, metaphorically speaking. The Broncos didn't punch back. And you look back at the year that followed, and there were a lot of times the Broncos got punched and didn't punch back. 2021 in Minnesota, 2 joint practices. It was evident that the answer at quarterback was not on the roster. Teddy Bridgewater was going to be a bridge, pardon the pun, and Drew Lock just didn't have it. And then you get to the preseason game, and Drew Lock has that big touchdown pass to KJ Hamler. It was against the backups. Okay? When he went up against the starters, it didn't go well. And I got a lot of – I'm still a little bitter about this because I got a lot of crap for somehow understating that touchdown pass. And I'm like, well, I saw what he did against the ones earlier that week, and it was awful.
Right.
And then, he does it against the 2s. Well, whoop-de-doo. Again, with all respect to what's going to go on Saturday in that preseason game, the most important work this week is happening today and tomorrow.
Yes.
And I'm sorry for all those who can't see it, but that's just how it's structured. The thrust of the work that they're trying to get done that matters will happen today and will happen again tomorrow morning.
And we will talk more about, how many starters should play and all that. That's for Friday's show probably. But today, tomorrow, we're going to be going over practice. And
we should pre-record Friday's show if we can.
We should. You and I both have an appreciation for Drew, but his fans
The lock
I don't want
stands.
to derail the show, but I had problems with lock stands, not with Drew himself. Love Andy, love his family. Like
that's where I stood.
Yeah.
That was the year I felt like quitting because some of those people were awful to me. Okay.
And couldn't hear what was really happening. Bart is upset. The offense has zero spark. Well, there's a spark who's probably going to get a number change, maybe 38.
He had a couple of nice runs today.
We said
again,
he should go to number 1, right? Isn't that what we said? Like,
yeah,
wouldn't it be nice?
He's a number 1.
Jonathan Cooper 0, Jaleel McLaughlin number 1, Pat Surtain number 2, Russell Wilson number 3. I think it's nice.
Sorry, KJ Hamler, but you're not on the roster right now. I think,
and he's not coming back. They're being nice when they're like, we'd like to see if he. Yeah. Okay.
Look, Marvin Mims.
Not gonna happen.
Marvin Mims is filling the rotational vertical speed role.
And had Russ had that ball on point that we talked about earlier, and I know it's a dump off, but I mean, Mims
would have gone.
Do something.
Mims was going to go a long way.
He was going to do something.
By the way, and the other thing also, when you watch the Rams and the Broncos, remember the Rams are in year 7 running this offense, basically, right? There's the players have changed, but there is a consistency and a constancy to it. And conceptually, what they're doing resonates. The Broncos are in year 1 of this, and it shows because when you watch how the Rams so effectively run that bubble screen, they had a couple of explosive plays.
Or the end around to Skornick.
Yeah.
It's like that's just what they do, and the Broncos were not prepared.
They are at a more advanced level in terms of scheme than the Broncos are. It's just going to take some time. And today, I think, illuminates a lot of that.
And it's going to require
they're
some
used
patience.
to teaching it out now in LA. And
they're used to running it, executing
and you
it.
change, and look, you change a little bit every year, but you got some old linemen, you got Matthew Stafford. They've been around for a while. They know what they're doing. They're comfortable with it. And the Broncos, it's like they're all wearing the new pairs of shoes.
Got to break them in.
Pinches a little bit.
Yeah.
Or to use a Wayne's World reference, it's like a new pair of underwear. At first it's constrictive, but then it becomes a part of you.
Oh my God. I was going to use Anchorman. It stings the nostrils. But here's the final point on that explosive thing.
Dirty underwear stings the nostrils, but I digress.
It does. Jaleel McLaughlin, look at what they're doing there for explosion. Y'all want explosion, right? And then Mace, go back to that Mims play. You and I both said he's going to do something with that. If Russ hits him, he's going to. Marvin Mims is special, everybody. Okay, so here's the thing. And this is what I love about Sean Payton. We see it. Guys are open. They're setting up to be explosive. The timing has to be better. The execution has to be better. But Sean Payton's offense, I'm not going to shock anyone here. Mace, it works.
It works, but you got to give it time. I think this is going to be an average offense this year. But you've had below average offenses for the last 6 years, right? Mm-hmm. So that's an improvement. But this isn't going to be built overnight.
Right.
Keep the expectations in line. And another reason you keep the expectations in line, and you paid more attention to this part of the field than I did because I was watching the 7-on-7s, problems in the pit.
Yes.
You saw the 1-on-1s today.
Yes.
I looked over at a few of them, and maybe it was my small sample size. The few I saw weren't good.
Yeah, they were not good. And the pit is I'll speak for you, our favorite part of practices when we're on the All-Star road trip, Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, what have you, because it's one-on-one, offensive line versus defensive line. And today, through rotation of the starters, everybody got 2 reps, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Through that rotation, the Broncos won 1, and it was Matt Henningsen. I watched Jonathan Cooper get stonewalled. I watched Zach Allen get stonewalled.
And this is a drill that has advantage to the defense.
And it's something where we had been seeing these guys work Isaiah Prince or Garrett Bowles or McGlinchey or, Cam Fleming. The Broncos defensive line and pass rushers and one-on-one situations had been, schooling everybody. Today, Henningsen was the only winner.
That's bad.
What say you?
Let's
so does that mean the Broncos
tomorrow.
Offensive line is really that bad?
There are some who would say that.
I still believe in Cooper. I still believe in Zach Allen. I still believe Nick Benito's on a come up. But it was shocking, Mason.
And they had some moments during the team periods as well.
They did. So. And Gregory had moments. Yeah. Gregory was getting there.
It's all about the RGs today. Randy Gradishar and Randy Gregory.
And was RG3 there? Somebody said that.
He was. Is he like doing the Rams preseason game?
I'm not sure.
I know Andrew Siciliano was there because he was complaining about whatever radio station his Uber driver was listening to on Twitter.
All right. There you go.
Whatever. I can't call it X. It's Twitter.
It's always going to be.
It's Twitter. Like Mile High Stadium.
But problems in the pit. This is something we'll want to see corrected tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And again, when it came to game situations, team drills, Gregory was winning. Benito was jumping off sides. That's a concern. But it was
back-to-back plays.
Maybe alarming, Mace, is the best way to sum it up, because they had been putting in such good work. And it was like, oh, time to watch the pit. And then you're like, oh, God.
The pit was the pits.
They're not.
Sorry.
They're not winning anything today. But Henningsen, of course, Henningsen. Is there a better try-hard guy with great technique than Matt Henningsen?
No. Guys like that inevitably end up lasting 7 or 8 years. And they start occasionally, but they're fringier guys comparatively.
Work hard guys.
Yeah, but there's always a place for them.
Okay.
In the league, there's a place for Henningsen on this team too. I've got him in Sharpie on the 53.
Yes, no doubt, no doubt. Any other joint practice observations, Mace, before we tie a bow on today's program?
I think Alberto, man. It's been an interesting 8 days or so for him. Last week, he pancakes Marcus Haynes. He has a great blocking game on Saturday. He has a great block on Joe McLaughlin's touchdown. Mm-hmm. It's the best blocking work we've seen from him. And today, admittedly, it's with the backups. A lot of work with Jarrett Stidham. He has three touchdowns and another explosive catch downfield.
Might have been 4.
Yeah. He's making a statement here. Sean Payton alluded to this yesterday about, have some conversations with players. Okay, you got to step it up here. I wonder if there was a conversation with Alberto that has resulted in him looking like a different player in the last
Is it
week.
too little, too late, though? And is he being showcased so that Sean McVay picks up Alberto?
Maybe that is it.
Hey, we're going to cut him, but if you send us a 7th rounder, you can have him?
Maybe. But in that case, you got to get him more involved on Saturday. If Alberto is out there and has 6 catches for 100 yards on Saturday, I think we're all going to be like, okay, they're showcasing him. But when the talent is starting to avail itself, do you really want to get rid of a guy like that?
Time. And I'm not defending Adam Troutman.
Adam Troutman had a good day today.
Troutman had a good day, but tight end, I give guys 3 years. Okay. And then with Alberto, okay, maybe he needs that 4th year. But this talent his physical gifts are incredible.
Well,
if he ever puts it together.
The other thing also on Alberto, he has the physical gifts, but also looking at the tight end position, he's making plays. Greg Dulcich hasn't really made plays in the last few days. He's been quiet. Now, Dulcich is clearly ahead of Alberto on the depth chart. We saw Dulcich. He was targeted by Russell Wilson. The pass wasn't a great pass, but there was contact. Drew a flag, would have moved the chains. But yeah.
It's a results-based business, everybody.
Yeah. I'm not saying Dulcich is going to get cut. Let me make that clear.
Not at all.
But you start saying, all right, maybe do they go heavy at tight end, lighter at wide receiver, heavier at tight end?
Would you say 5 then? Because you and I both appreciate Nate Adkins. I don't want to see Adkins even on the practice squad, but so if you're talking 5 tight ends, now we're talking 5 receivers.
So let's have a conversation here, because usually you keep 25 guys on offense, 25 on defense, right?
Right.
9 linemen, 2 quarterbacks, so you're at 11. 5 receivers,
21.
16. 5 tight ends, 21. 3 running backs and a fullback. It's 25.
That's what you do then.
There is room, if you're constructing the roster in a specific manner, to keep 5 tight ends.
And you will use them, because this will be lots of 12 personnel, everybody.
And I think if you're constructing the best 53 and the best 25 on offense, it's something you have to think about.
One of our topics, probably Friday, is going to be about the best 53. So we'll get there, everybody. We'll get there. Is that a wrap today, Mace?
I think we're good. Feels
good.
It feels right. I got to write a
Spinal Tap. We got in
Wayne's World. We got in American Psycho.
Yes.
You know, we didn't really get into his treatise on Genesis and Phil Collins. This is Susudio.
Yes.
Great song.
It is.
Personal favorite.
I have no idea what it means. But it's incredible.
Oh, man.
All right.
If you know, you know.
He's Andrew Mason. He's at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey. OBT is a BFD, and we appreciate you all. The numbers, the response, the fans, even the YouTube commenters are mostly nice.
I didn't really have this nice little thing at the end of yesterday's show, so thank you for picking it back up.
Okay.
I just kind of said, take care. It's brought to you by our friends over at Champ Honda, yada, yada, yada. Thanks for watching. I didn't do the be safe, be kind, know that you're appreciated. Stay tuned. And as always, please
stay frosty.